It was March 1962, a year begun with the devastation that Karen's death had brought. I was well into my first year of Oak Park and River Forest High School. I'd applied myself. I was on the track team. Our neighborhood baseball team had continued on. I had a job at Parky's hot dog and French fries place in Berwyn, so I had once again recovered. JFK was president. The Soviet Union had tested a very large atomic bomb. The Beatles were on their way up in the UK. A chimp had been sent into outer space. Well, they couldn't send a dog, for it would stick its head out the window and ruin the mission. Patrick Hickey and Sharon Dalton had drifted apart. He didn't realize what he had, perhaps, plus he had gotten into pot smoking and beer drinking, two wrong roads, both of which led to perdition. Rick O'Kane, my former St. Bernardine's classmate, headed in Sharon Dalton's direction. They eventually got married, and later divorced. Nothing of any romantic note had happened lately, nor had I much looked. My father had been sick for a while, but had gotten better and was now as good as new. Summer arrived. Lazy days. Judy from New Jersey came back for 6 weeks or so with her sister, they having missed last year. Judy was friskier now, and so we had another summer fling. She lit up a funny cigarette in my basement once. I didn't indulge this time. I didn't like hardly being able to move. Later, my mother had asked, "What's that smell?" "Incense," I told her. No more just so-so relationships, I told myself. My family and I went on vacation 500 miles away to Lakewoods in Cable, Wisconsin. I met Penny in the lodge. She called me over to play cards with some others. I did, and she pulled me aside on our way home and kissed me. I was there for a week with her. She talked and talked. No one else could hardly get a word in. She lived only 20 miles away from me, and we'd get together twice a month for years to come. I could fill another book with our escapades. It was now March 1963. I was in my second year of Oak Park and River Forest High School. The Viet Cong had had their first victory. The White House had become Camelot. Nothing locally romantic had come my way. It had been a drought, although there had been some moderate rainfalls. Perhaps fate had already given me my due in life, and more, and was now withholding more. Well, I had been working a lot too, so I had already been blessed twice, although both had ended, one tragically. I still looked at the experiences as great luck, for without them, the bad luck would not have applied, and there would have been no experiences. So, since it had happened twice, then it could happen again, given the necessary conjunction of depth, maturity, feeling, love, and adventure woven together into life's golden braid. My new best friend was Joe Gaynor from Clarence Avenue in South Oak Park. He was both funny and adventurous. He lives in Hawaii now, all because he came to visit me there once. There was kind of an informal caste system at the high school, for the River Foresters and the North Oak Parkers were well-to-do, many wealthy even. Ernest Hemingway's family had lived in North Oak Park, and he had gone to my school long ago. Another dividing line was the one between the Dupers and the Non, who were called Greasers. Dupe stood for Dear Old Oak Park. The Dupers were mostly the ones having crew cuts, wearing white socks and brownish shoes, and sporting a sweater with a sports letter on it, or at least a rich and fancy sweater. The Greasers wore black socks and black shoes, with more than a few having motorcycles. But most of them were just cool guys, and hardly any of them overly greased their hair. Some of them weren't all that interested in school. Another, slighter line was that between the studious and the not-so. Another, larger one, was that of the juniors and seniors versus the freshmen and sophomores. I was from the poor section, the southern end of Oak Park, although we were not poor, but I was in sports and studious, but not to the extreme. Staying within the top 20 would be fine, so I guess I was hard to pigeonhole. I had an after-school job at Gerber's Hardware on Oak Park Avenue, just over the expressway. Then it burned down and I got a job helping to build a new Gerber's Hardware down the block. As for local romance, I had been on kind of a break. Winter had been cold and icy and it was still going on. At least I was making some money toward college, which I planned to commute to, in Chicago, this being the cheapest and only way for me to go. Geometry was going well, Mr. Rossiter's humor making it bearable, as was English, it being okay, but taking a turn for the worse when we had to read Ivanhoe. History, boring, in that humans made the same mistakes over and over again. Also had French and philosophy. Last year, biology had won the grand prize of interest, and this year it was philosophy. The philosophy teacher had seated me next to Don Light, who was number 6 in the sophomore class because I was number 20, since I suppose we would do most of the talking, and thus should be in each other's hearing range. How did I know this? Because my mother worked at the high school, she telling me that the teachers loved having the higher students. On the first day of class, Don and I went on and on about natural law. His descriptions were more generic, while mine were more practical, after I took care of the scientific parts. The teacher talked me into joining the debate team, which I did, although it seemed that it would be a drain on my time, but it proved to be exciting. Here's an essay on natural law that I polished up decades later, changing it to a poem, meaning that this isn't exactly how it was in philosophy class universal natural law, and then its violations. You will always be caught, so don't even give it a thought. The violation of universal natural law is the cause of our problems. All of everything that becomes rife that plagues individual and national life. These stresses only leading to more strife, from lowlifes leaving their wife, for the wildlife of nightlife, to cutting someone with a knife. So stem problems of national health, crime, the economy, education, wealth, and the black environmental sins, all of them having their origin in a widespread law violation by some portion of the population. Universal natural law is very terse in governing the entire universe, it being the orderly principles that regulate physical events processes. Science defines the universal law of nature, a precise description of how nature matures. Universal law pervades everything of all that is in passage and being, from the motion of particles to the evolution of life's articles, operating at every scale, the subatomic, atomic, molecular, biological, geological, astrophysical, and cosmological. The universe is structured, hence, in these many layers of existence as worlds within worlds, distinguished and not only furled by vastly different time and distance scales, but that every level has its own set of details. For example, an electron nucleus system is not analogous to that of a planet sun. The more superficial macroscopic levels of nature can be seen as fragmented expressions, for sure, that are manifested from the more unified laws governing deeper levels with their scrimshaws. The reflections of the dazzling symmetries of what were once inaccessible mysteries. The outer becomings are based on inner ones, the only fountainhead of all the rhythms. And the converse is not true. Nature's governance is maximally efficient, for it is frugal as not a spendthrift. It following the principle of least action in all of its action and protraction. This is why a ray of light refracts when going from air to water's tract, minimizing the time and saving every dime. From this maximal economy of nature, all classical behavior can be scriptured. Entropy is a count of quantum states, accessible to a macroscopic system's estate, this available number ever increasing. The nature of life is to grow, ever reaching. The path of least action's welcome is just the macroscopic outcome of the simultaneous superposition of multiple coexisting paths auctions at the microscopic level, the outcome ever of the least income, the law to which all must succumb. All is rooted in the verses of the constitution of the universe. Life takes advantage and cause of the universal natural laws, even such as in merely walking, which is an immensely complex undertaking. We employ technology in all of its variety. Everything that we fail to accomplish is but due to the total failure to apply universal natural law effectively, this being the source of all difficulty. In the absence of knowledge of a lever, the simple task of moving a boulder becomes complex and arduous to the shoulder. Not learning gravity has caused non-mild injuries to many a young child. The old uses of radiation caused cancer tumults. The use of DDT had many adverse results. Smoking cigarettes, heavy drinking, being out late, and other addictive obsessions surely violate universal natural law at whatever rate, resulting in negative consequences, while psychological violations dispense stress directly in a sequence immense. While fulfillment of desire can bring happiness, it also raises the scope and standardness of future desires, making the duress of frustration an inevitable process. Over time, this causes psychological stress, which in turn impairs creativity's success, stalling future desires by watering their fires, and also leads to problems of health. These then causing further stealth and violations of universal natural law, resulting in the nonsense of a life out of balance, leading to aggression, anxiety, impulsive violent behavior, hostility and substance abuse, a vicious cycle of refuse that, among other effects, fills up the prisons to correct.